It turns out when you allow Ukraine to strike into Russian territory, things get better. That's what we're finding out after the mayor of Kharkiv spoke in Germany alongside Zelensky, where he said that things have gone a little bit calmer in Kharkiv. For those who have no idea what I'm talking about, it was roughly about 2 weeks ago now where the United States finally took off their gloves and said to Ukraine, hey, we trust you guys enough, so we're going to go ahead and allow you to use our weapons, the ones that we've provided for you, to strike over the border of Russia, right on the Kharkiv/Belgorod border, and strike northeast into Russian areas. Now, I gotta be honest with you, this is something that you and I didn't even realize was truly a thing up until about maybe 6-7 months ago when Russia learned that they could put their stuff right on the other side and Ukraine can't touch them, at least with Western weapons, because of that contract they had with not only the United States, but pretty much every other ally. And that is, here's the weapons, you can strike Russia, but it's gotta be within the Ukrainian border pre-2014. And Russia kind of knew about this, and so that's why they put all of their S-300s and other launchers just on the other side of the border, kind of doing one of those like, haha, you can't touch us. And yes, there's been times where Ukraine has been able to use drones, Neptunes, and other things to strike Russian targets, but now that Ukraine is able to use US weapons, things have definitely changed. So in those past 2 weeks, we've seen a major drop in bombardments from the Russian side into Kharkiv. Not only in Kharkiv state, but also Kharkiv the city. And that's what the mayor was saying. Granted, there are still a lot of explosions. Just yesterday, Russia used guide bombs, and it still caused the death of a few people. And that's something, actually the main reason why the mayor of Kharkiv was in Germany, because Germany announced today that Ukraine's going to get more Patriot missiles and eventually another Patriot battery. And most likely, that's probably going towards Kharkiv. But this doesn't mean that the situation in that area has gotten too much better. Russia still has 2 settlements in their control, and Ukrainians are fighting back. Now, the Russians haven't moved forward. They're at a point right now to where Ukrainians not only are able to fire into Russian territory to take down the launchers, they're also able to have a supply chain to keep the Russians back. And if Ukraine can keep this up long enough, they could push the Russians back further. And maybe if the United States allows Ukraine to strike anywhere, say within, 100 kilometers of the border, then I'm pretty sure they can push back the Russians enough to where they can move all the resources they have in Kharkiv, maybe towards Kherson, maybe towards Zaporizhia or Donbass, and finally push back the Russians. And we're definitely seeing a lot of movement, a lot of changes in things, especially in the past few weeks. Ukrainians have been taking down Russian S-300s and S-400s like crazy. We're also seeing more longer strikes in the past few months, stretching as far as 1,800 kilometers. So right now, Ukrainians are hitting Russia on many different fronts. And it definitely has a lot of people questioning, what is the next move? Yesterday, it was announced that F-16s, they're coming, but some of them are going to stay back in allied countries, sort of as a reserve, in case if something needs to be swapped out. Which makes you wonder, why do you make these announcements unless they're already happening? Unless we're at a point in this war where Ukraine has them and they're going to be able to do X, Y, and Z. The reason why I bring that up is because John Kirby, just about 4 days ago, said something strange and kind of out of the blue, where it was like, hey, we never told Ukraine they couldn't strike Russian aircraft that are flying in Russian territory with their weapons. Which makes you go, it's an odd time to say that, right? Unless Ukraine already has Western weapons on Western aircraft and are firing into Western targets. As I said earlier, Zelensky is in Germany where he met with their parliament. And what was interesting is that if you watch the videos, you may have noticed there were a lot of empty seats. Not a lot, but there were some empty seats because the far right AFD and the far left BSW parties boycotted it. And I find it's weird. With Germany, things are very strange. Sometimes Schultz and his crews are like, we need to do this, we need to do this, we need to get it done. And then other times they're scared of Russia. And they decide not to do X, Y, and Z because they don't want to be pulled down deeper into this whole thing. Because at one point, I mean, even a little bit, they kind of were really reliant on Russia for a lot of their stuff. And I don't know if in the back of their head they're saying, well, when this is done, Russia's going to be in shambles and maybe we could start up those, partnerships again, but we can't ruin those partnerships because if we do, then we won't be able to get X, Y, and Z once this is over. It's a weird situation. At the same time, once again, they're giving another battery and all those air missiles, Patriot missiles, etc. So it's just very interesting. I really don't get it. I'll never understand German politics. Some days it makes sense. Some days it doesn't make sense. It kind of is what it is. But when it comes to the war map and seeing what's going on, a lot of people are still begging Germany to give Ukraine the Tauruses. You've got the Storm Shadows. You've got the Scalps. You've got, Attackums. Got some HIMARS. We need longer range stuff so that Ukraine can do exactly what they did the other day when they attacked that Su-57. Because if Ukraine can take down the 5th generator fighter and take down bombers and take down the factories that are making the equipment, if they could take down all of these things that are attacking Ukraine, then guess what? Things can end sooner. And to tie it all together, this is where I think the whole thing of Ukraine being allowed to use Western weapons in northeast Kharkiv is kind of like a test. I think the world has been on pins and needles and kind of pinpointing into like, okay, well, let's try this. And if that works, maybe that. And it's kind of been this way for Ukraine the entire time. And we can have the argument that the United States and everyone else should have just trusted Ukraine to begin with. Because if we did, I'm pretty sure things would have been very different. Things would have been very different in 2023. And I think that we have already learned that Ukraine has been doing the right thing. They've already been doing and following all the rules that everyone's been giving them to a T. And I think that we need to, as at least the United States and other countries, need to understand that Ukraine knows exactly what it's doing. It not only knows what it's doing, they're doing it right, and they're showing proof of everything they're doing. Heck, in most attacks, Ukraine has another drone somewhere, whether it's a naval drone for the sea or another recon drone filming everything, so that if Russia says, no, that didn't happen or that did happen, Ukraine just goes, huh? Look, it did or it didn't, or you're lying, and quickly are able to prove to the world that they're doing the right thing. Which is funny because it kind of goes hand in hand with today's breaking news, which is the fact that the Azov now has permission from the United States to get weapons and to get training. And as you know, from 2014 onward, there was a big ban from the Azov getting anything. Now, if you don't know the Azov, they are the elite forces of Ukraine. Since 2014, these guys have been the bad boys. And yes, there is a checkered past and a checkered history. But since then, things have been very different. They're now a part of the military. They have a structure. They have a whole system. And the United States have seen this. They've seen these warriors, these elite warriors, and the things they've changed and how they become and what they're doing, and are now greenlighting them to use the weapons and to get the formal training. Which means that these men are going to be unstoppable. And in a way, I think that this was essentially the United States saying, we trust you now, we trust you. And where is this trust coming from? Well, according to the BBC that spoke to a State Department spokesperson, they said that after a very long vetted process, quote, they found no evidence of gross violations of human rights by the brigade. And after that came out, after the overwhelming resources that were put into this, we now know the Azov is clean. Keep in mind that Russia put together a massive propaganda machine about these guys. Like over the top, a lot of fabrication, a lot of stuff that really wasn't true. And it took the United States, the UK, and other countries to really sit down, go through the evidence, figure things out, to find out that Russia started the propaganda, and they pushed this narrative which really wasn't true, just so that this team that is elite could be shut down. Because at the end of the day, the Russians are scared of how elite these guys are. These guys put up a show. I mean, you go back to Mariupol, you've seen what they did back in 2014. These guys, man, they were ruthless and would do whatever it takes to fight for Ukraine. And Russia was scared. So they put together that propaganda machine and really started pumping it. And now that these guys have been cleared, the Russians are pushing even harder for this propaganda, saying, I mean, Russian spokesperson Dmitry, who you all love and know, right, said that the United States was prepared to flirt with neo-Nazis to suppress Russia. Really? Not the fact that you guys attacked a peaceful country, multiple peaceful countries, and making it seem like it's a fake operation in X, Y, and Z. But the U.S. is doing the wrong thing here, right? Now, I just have to say this over and over again. Russian propaganda is integrated into all social media. Sometimes it's hard to point it out. Sometimes it's easy to point it out. We've pointed it out here many of times, showcasing even our analytics, showing that Russia had hired troll farms in Africa, different countries in Africa, to troll or to attack different accounts. It's a real thing. It happens every day. Heck, I did a video yesterday that I used the hashtag Azov, okay? Now remember, there's the town, there's the Sea of Azov, there's the group, there's the Azov style. There's a lot of things with the word Azov in it. It got flagged because, quote unquote, a terrorist organization. And this is around the time where the US and the UK said these guys are not that, and that Russia had purposely did that and pushed propaganda for that, and that it wasn't true. So that's the craziness of what's been going on. There's honestly been so many news stories just today, but I think the Azov thing might be the biggest thing to come out because once again, if the United States says these guys are clear, these guys are good to go, no problems here, no problems there, then Russia will be scared because these guys are going to have the right weapons, the right equipment, and nothing's going to be stopping them to get through the Russians to make sure Ukraine will be free. Anyway, in the comment section below, let me know what you think, and I want to thank you for joining me. If you haven't done so yet, please subscribe, turn on notifications, and give this video a thumbs up.